Zero Authority is a community of people who believe in open source and permissionless systems. Thanks for supporting the community. Remember why you started.
We believe in this opportunity to work in Web3, and people coming in will be a massive shift.
There's a lot of opportunities that are for naught. They're lost, and their people's skills and their what they're really capable of doing is not able to be shined through right now.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zero Authority is a community of people who believe in open source and permissionless systems built on stacks secured by Bitcoin. Today we have a special guest. We're going to talk to Brian Harrington from Choice App. He's a Bitcoin advocate. He believes in the right choices for a changing world. He's created a whole host of products based on Bitcoin. He believes in the power of decentralization. Really cool to talk to him. And the board behind you, by the way, I didn't get to mention in the pre-discussion, but I still remember, I'll never forget that during those trials back in 2009. I remember I was just heading into college, and I was like, who's this guy behind the scenes holding up this buy Bitcoin? What is Bitcoin? So we're going to talk about that. Really, James and I, our curiosity was piqued in a discussion over Twitter, and we were talking about gas tokens priced in Bitcoin. We were talking about stacks, Bitcoin, decentralization. We were talking about just the future of the digital economies and where stacks is going as an ecosystem and how Bitcoin will be the final settlement layer of the world. But before we jump into all these really cool topics, Brian, James, how are you guys today on this beautiful Friday?
What's up, guys? Happy Friday. No, it's just life is good. No complaints.
Yeah, doing great. We've been looking forward to this call, so yeah, stoked.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for jumping in on the call with us here on the live stream for Zero Authority. So just wanted to give people some background. You can find Brian on Twitter at Brian Harrington, and Choice App is a really cool product too, where your retirement account now can have some Bitcoin in it. Before that, it was an idea, it was a pie in the sky. I've been following you, Brian, for years now, and really cool. I've seen a few interviews, and I saw the one with T.O. I don't have a cool beard like you guys, but give me 2 years and it might be there.
It's there. Yeah. No, dude, look, talking to Trevor was really awesome. And like, I've been doing like Bitcoin and crypto thing for like 7 years, but you learn something every day. Like, that's literally true. And so wanting to interview him and wanting to understand like what like Stacks crew is up to came out of like, I'm looking for fresh perspective. Like, that's literally true, because yeah, just my feed like felt kind of stagnant. And so I just kind of like cycled through like trying to find some different ideas. And no, like people that have been working on stacks like sparked interest for me too.
No, really cool to hear it. And I was going to ask you just some of your thoughts lately on what's been going on in Bitcoin and stacks, and just some of your background where you found how you found Bitcoin.
Yeah. So like, my dad sent me a ref link to Coinbase. Like, that's how I found Bitcoin. My dad told me about it. And so then it grew from there in terms of like, I used to work on a lot of political campaigns. Like back in the day, I would just work on political campaigns, and I was a student government like nerd. Just that's how I thought you could put a good positive dent on the world. And I started doing it after college in the real world. And it's funny, I would have a lot of time off in between these campaigns, and I would just be watching YouTube about Bitcoin. And it was like, my disenfranchisement with kind of legacy politics and my knowledge of Bitcoin, like both crossed each other, of just like, that's when it kind of jumped from me from being, just a way to make money into kind of the you can't take the politics out of Bitcoin. Like, you can't take that part out of it. Of like, if you replace fiat money with a currency where the monetary policy is written in software for everyone to know ahead of time instead of governed by humans, like, you can't take politics out of that. And so that's when I became really, really passionate about that. And I've been doing like grassroots Bitcoin organizing basically every day since 2019. And so then fast forward into 2022, I just kind of reached this point where like in order to do the grassroots Bitcoin adoption stuff, in order to talk about kind of Bitcoin as better than fiat money, it requires putting on some blinders to kind of like crypto, NFT, like Web3, DeFi, buzzwords, like throw all the buzzwords out there. And you'll even notice in me, like talking to you guys, I'm not going to use like the buzzwords or receive the buzzwords in the exact same way that someone who's been like coming from the other side of like tracking all that stuff everywhere up to date, but then is just like not really sure about like Bitcoin versus fiat money. And there's lots of reasons about why those two things fell into separate buckets. But it is what it is. And so I came over here and I'm like, okay, what is happening? Like what has changed since 2017? Like that was 5 years ago. Burned by ICOs and burned by tokens in 2017 was now 5 years ago. Guys, like I have a mortgage, like I have a kid now, like we're in a different world. And so I just started re-asking the questions of what is different. And it had been 2022, I've used Lightning, I've used Liquid, I've used RSK, I've used DeFi and Ethereum. Like I had used a bunch of stuff and I've used a lot of like just the apps and betas and everything that are out there, discrete log contracts, like all this stuff. And I kind of hit this point of like, it feels like we should be farther than where we are. And I don't mean that in like a depressing way or in like a complaining way, because that's not what I mean. Like it's good. Like it's all good. Everything is all good. But I was just like, it feels kind of like all of these L2s are just all at the same point. Like I shouldn't really have any of them on like any sort of pedestal, or like, why do I have a favorite? Like, why do I even have a preferred? That doesn't make any sense because I've used all of them and they're all okay, but they all just kind of still have this like something missing. And so that's then when, look, like Trevor and I had that discussion among other things, and it was about the like people that are creating software need upside. And I realized that the way that Bitcoin gets built and gets contributed to, layer twos and smart contract platforms, and again, boom, 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 all the buzzwords are not going to follow that exact thing. They're not going to follow that exact path. There's going to be difference. And then perhaps like a for-profit thing has the chance to outbuild a nonprofit thing. Like there's a very real chance that happens. And I didn't realize that so much of my like thoughts about Bitcoin becoming base currency of the world were relying on kind of this like grant funding, tinkering, like cycle loop. I didn't realize that. Like I felt like other incentives had like kicked in to where the L2s and stuff like that were off to the races, but it doesn't exactly feel like that. And so that's why 2022, I was like, I'm just going to start over with what I know and just re-look at like what is happening on L2s in general. So that's how I've arrived here. And that's how I've arrived through then learning how is Stacks different than others, and how does the mining work? How does it interact with Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there too. It's like you look around, as you know, we've been in Bitcoin for a little while too, and you look around and I think we had told ourselves maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we're like, oh man, like we're going to be on this wild adoption ride, and we really have been in some ways. But these other like L1 kind of, you know, gas for smart contracts have really taken off, and you have a lot of eyeballs on that. And I think it's an interesting dynamic. You see some Bitcoiners that like to just kind of put all of that to the side and say, you know, hey, we're just focusing on fiat versus Bitcoin. And then you have others that realize, okay, well, smart contracts have value in their own right. You know, maybe how all of this shakes out and how all of this works will be a bit different. But I really like that nexus where you have Bitcoin, and Bitcoin can still overcome fiat and be the base currency, the settlement layer for everything. And then to still understand that, hey, these smart contracts, maybe they should be priced in Bitcoin, you know, if that's going to be the end result.
Well, no, another thing that happened to me too, I was rewatching the Silicon Valley like TV series, and because
Love
I never
that
finished the
show.
whole series, so I went back and watched the whole thing. And when they get to the part of like they're releasing the ICO, and immediately the VC character was like offended, and she was like, "You're cutting me out of the deal? Like, what the heck, guys?" Like, and I was like, I can't believe that pop culture was getting like tokenization, right? In that capacity. Like a pop culture show is saying like issuing a token is cutting out VC middlemen. But then somewhere along the line, like it had kind of been rebranded as like, no, tokenization is like money printing, and that's like competing with Bitcoin, and it's like blah blah blah. But now, and that's what I mean about like that lens does not work anymore. Like that lens is not like, you can continue to operate like that if you want, but I think a more accurate like observation of what's happening now is there was a lot of like token issuance with poor designs and really poor designs. And so that's what happened, and that's what happened. And then Bitcoin like has traction and has found traction as like what it is. But then now we're coming back to, why did those have poor designs? And is it still possible, to like cut out middlemen and like do other things and democratize, other things? And that's where like the way that I start saying is like separating companies and state, like reinventing what a company is. Like Bitcoin is helping have us have a solid measuring stick for me and you to understand like our value and understand how to pay for things. And the fact that that's fully programmable, that's great. Like, so now if instead of having a social security number tied to a USD bank account, and that's my like employment protocol, now if I can have an identity paired with Bitcoin and that be my employment protocol, that's positive. Like that's literally positive. That has nothing to do with things competing with Bitcoin. Like that has to do with increasing freedom in the world. And so that's why I try to just like always come back to, even in the sense of, even though there's still a lot of poorly designed stuff out there, I want to focus on being at least trying as hard as I can to be more precise with like separating, like all we're doing at a very simple level could just be replacing one form of software as a service with a new form of software as a service that creates more freedom.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing too, I've thought about over the weeks and months and even past years, I've seen a lot of tweets from different Bitcoiners. I see Udiverse and Eric talking a lot, and there's this disconnect, right? So how could Bitcoin become the final settlement layer if we only use it for peer-to-peer cash, right? There has to be other use cases, but sometimes some people can't see through their own bias about how to visualize this future and how to arrive at that future. And it's such a narrow view at times. And so I think, and this is what led me to Stacks. I had Bitcoin before it's 2017, and then I saw the rise of Ethereum, and I said, you know what? I bet there's someone working on ways to do more with Bitcoin. And that's when I stumbled upon Stacks. And back in 2017, there were a bunch of shitty websites everywhere. I do think Ethereum did a great job of explaining what it is for an ICO, or what is it to develop Solidity contracts. But then when I stumbled upon Stacks, they had this really nice layout, really great programming language with clarity. They would explain things, and I thought, okay, this is what is missing in Bitcoin world. And that's why I stumbled upon it, because I wanted to do other things with my Bitcoin. And so I think as we keep going towards this future and these use cases, there's going to be a lot of applications that people want to build upon Bitcoin. And so that kind of leads us to the next piece here, where we had a good discussion over Twitter, and it really was insightful. When you were saying, and I think we were just talking about a range of topics related to Bitcoin and Stacks. But when you said that no other L1 smart contract gas token has inherent exchange rate with layer 0 Bitcoin, that really kind of sparked my curiosity. I thought where you were going with that is, over time, when the block rewards run out for Bitcoin, that Stacks could continue to carry on that block, the block subsidy. But when you went more towards, no, this, as if we're talking about the block space demand and over time BTC demand, that's when I thought, okay, this is interesting, and I don't think we talk about this at all.
Yeah. So no, it's like it's not inherently about the Bitcoin reward like running out in 2140 or whatever it is. I'm not concerned about that because Bitcoin has a better monetary policy than fiat money, and like it just makes more sense for humanity to move on to that. And so I'm not concerned about that. Like I think transaction fees will people will mine, and especially when you have the whole Bitcoin mining monetizes like wasted energy better than any other tool on earth. I'm not concerned about any of that. Where this is coming from of like the gas token having an inherent exchange rate with Bitcoin, in that currently, so if you have Bitcoin and then Lightning uses a pegged Bitcoin, Liquid uses pegged Bitcoin, RSK uses pegged Bitcoin. Stacks, if you wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum, you have floating ETH for gas. Wrapped Bitcoin on Solana, you have Solana as gas for that. So there's no reason, then what matters to a Bitcoiner who's trying to use Bitcoin as their base currency inside the app that's built on whatever infrastructure layer it's built on, Lightning, Liquid, Ethereum, Stacks, like whatever, then what trips people up, what trips up Bitcoiners that go on to use DeFi with Bitcoin as their base currency is the slippage that you experience when you're holding the gas token. Like, I don't enjoy using Ethereum apps. Like, I have the desire to use DeFi. Like, I want to use DeFi because I want Sats flow. Back to I don't phrase it as oh, I want my Bitcoin to do more. I phrase it as this. Like, I have a built up of Bitcoin savings, which is great. And I have a job that pays me recurring income. But I really got into real estate investing, and I got really into wanting to buy a small business, and I got really into I want to generate cash flow. Like, I want to generate Sats flow. My savings is on lock. My investing is on lock. Like, I'm a personal finance nerd, at heart, out of all of this. So that's what made me always trying. Dude, I've used DeFi on Liquid. I've used DeFi on RSK. I've used DeFi on Ethereum. Stacks, in the way that stacking pays you a Bitcoin dividend. Okay, so that sounds sick. So then you go down the trail of okay, where does that come from? Why does that matter? How is the yield happen, right? And then that leads you onto the forums about how does stacks mining work. And then when you see that proof of transfer sounds on its face, again, just coming from a skeptical Bitcoiner, it sounds like this meh, it's just words, just new words, meh, whatever, but then you're no, okay, you physically are bidding Bitcoin to write the next stacks block. So then it's okay, if there's all these people that like using stacks for whatever reason, it's just a product that's out, they love using stacks, and then in order for them to keep doing that, you have to bid Bitcoin for the next stacks block to arrive. That's people using NFTs on stacks are then driving up demand for Bitcoin. That's also, I come at everything mostly through an economics lens. I'm not really coming at it from a security angle or whatever. And that's why, so smart contracts secured by Bitcoin, I'm neutral on that. It's just a description. What's more interesting to me is the economics incentive of, can an L2 or can a smart contract platform with its own free floating token have a positive economic impact on Bitcoin? Or because there's because what I was told for a long time, right? What I was constantly told was a smart contract platform with its own free floating token is competing with Bitcoin. And so I'm okay, well, that sucks because Bitcoin has a great monetary policy and it's on this positive mission in the world. So I'm okay, that sucks. But if that is fundamentally not true with stacks, in that a free floating gas token and demand for those types of smart contracts and those types of apps is actually increasing demand for Bitcoin block space, then that flips the whole entire thing on its head. And from everything I understand about it so far, that is what's happening. And so then that leads you into okay, how do I just begin participating, and how do I try it? And so that leads you into testing out stacking, and the fact that here's another thing that made me very bullish on stacks. When I started asking questions, so what did I do? I interviewed someone who knows more about it than I did, and then I started publicly asking questions about it. And then when I would publicly ask questions about it, and people were hitting me back with like chatter about discrete log contracts and like moving on-chain Bitcoin, I was very like, these people are very serious about what they're doing. Like, no one hit me with like random fluff about stuff that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, that's like very interesting that they weren't just talking about like Stacks USD to the moon. Like, they were literally hitting me back with moving on-chain Bitcoin, like with discrete log contracts. And so that's sweet, man.
Yeah.
And then sorry, then the fact
No,
that
go.
like the fact that LN swap was already around, and you could non KYC go from Lightning or on chain into stacks and then into a stacking pool, all without going through an exchange, and that was already there. Like, by the time my like interest had been peaked, and then that infrastructure piece was already there, that's like pretty impressive. That's there and ready. It wasn't like oh, this is coming. So
yeah, I was gonna say too, when that Stacks Bitcoin floor, the one nice thing too is like way back in the day, if you were trading anything on any of these exchanges, most everything was traded in terms of Bitcoin, and we've gotten away from that. It's you see a lot more USD everywhere now.
Yep.
And it's like, you know, inherently you have this kind of ongoing, I call it like an ongoing continuous auction. It's like you have that floor price coming in every 10 minutes, and people are spending. You have Bitcoiners that are spending what's they know is the hardest asset, literally the best performing crypto asset that's out there, and they're willing to trade that away for something that, of course, is, you know, less. There's less of a chance of it becoming Bitcoin or something like that, but it's still, they understand that it has value. In a way, it has like intrinsic value, right? But one of the things that gets me is like you have some Bitcoiners where they're all for creating like a circular economy for people to trade work for Bitcoin and all this. But if you have Bitcoiners that are trading their hard-earned Bitcoin for a smart contract gas, all of a sudden it becomes, not so great. And it's like, well, hey, these people view it as it has intrinsic value. If you can buy a burger from McDonald's with Bitcoin, what's the difference in buying, some smart contract gas, right?
Dude, super, super fair. Like, super, super fair. Like, and that is, I think that needs to be hammered. Like, I think that needs to be super hammered about that doesn't make any sense. Like, that was a flaw in my own thinking, was like, that doesn't make any sense that Bitcoin would become base currency of like meat space small businesses without also being base currency of like things that are happening digitally on the internet. And so, yeah, I think it's a great point, and it should be continually like brought up.
And here's one thing I've told James my position on this. The white paper Satoshi wrote, it says a peer-to-peer cash for the world. And I know the narrative over time and to this point is a store of value. I do think once it hits terminal velocity and it's at that point where this is, let's say, I don't even know, but a 25 trillion asset, and it's at its peak, I do believe it will be a peer-to-peer cash for society. I do believe that. Whether I'm right or wrong, I have no idea, but I really believe the intention was for it to be a peer-to-peer. And if we're and this is why we think about pricing things in Satoshis, because that makes sense to us if we go to this world where things are priced in Bitcoin and Satoshis.
Yep. Yeah. I kind of fought that battle. Like, that's a lot of the last 2 years, like, was fighting that battle of store value versus medium exchange. And it goes back to when Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin forked off, we talk a lot about the technical fork, but we don't talk a lot about like the social fork, because that mattered to a lot of people. Like, commerce mattered to a lot of people. And I've said this like on Bitcoin Cash podcast, like, I wish that group of people had fought harder at like the social level than like forking code. And it's a bummer. Like it's a bummer that happened because yeah, it it probably did like slow down the movement. It did. Like it almost for sure like slowed down the movement. If those groups had still been together and we've been pushing on the same Bitcoin adoption like this whole entire time, the like mission of replacing fiat money would probably be farther along. And so I agree with that. Going back to like just kind of, I don't have any heartache on the like peer-to-peer part, I guess. Like it just I think we're getting to the place now of like spending Bitcoin, seeing Bitcoin replace fiat money in commerce is celebrated now. And so yeah, I think that's definitely a positive improvement.
Yeah. I would definitely be remiss if we didn't talk about choice. So when I stumbled across or when I saw choice, I think it was last year, and I said, okay, because there was the promise for many years of, hey, you'll be able to add Bitcoin to your retirement account, and then GBTC came along, and I was like, well, that's not right for me. It's right for institutions. There is a use case, believe that, but I wanted to see something. And when I saw choice, I said, okay, this is it. And I do believe over time, more people will have their retirement in Bitcoin.
Yeah. No, 100%, man. Like, and that's why I like doing like working here every day and doing that stuff every day, because I agree. The problem is not the types of accounts. The problem is the like currency that's being run in the types of accounts, and you only being able to settle your stocks, to fiat money, or settle your investments to fiat money. And so, yeah, like we are a custodian that you can get your money like off of Schwab, off of Fidelity, off of TD Ameritrade, and get it into, the assets that you want. And so that's exactly it.
Yeah, huge props to you for doing this. There's a lot of people where they really don't know what's even in their retirement account. They have all kinds of index funds that are made up of a bunch of companies that they didn't pick. They didn't, but when it comes to, how hard it is to custody your own Bitcoin, or, have your own Bitcoin in a retirement account. I mean, it's like, I guarantee you could even ask a bunch of boomers out there, would you want a small portion of your retirement in Bitcoin? They would say yes. Like,
Dude, 100%. To that point, like I tell people that all the time. It's like, if you've been working on your parents and just like trying to explain to them, what's going on, look, people have buckets of money like in these types of accounts. And so getting your parents to be open to a partial transfer and taking a shot at Bitcoin is like definitely a trend we're seeing among people being able to like, get their parents involved.
Have you seen it accelerating, Brian, over time? Like more people are interested in this product.
Definitely. Yeah. Right. Because people are upset that they're like they just mentioned, people are upset that they don't have options. They don't have the ability to choose things that they like in their current accounts, and they don't even know what's in it. That's the whole foundation for like our zombie campaign that we run during October, is because like it's just it's dead and forgotten, and it's not serving people. Like we have a savings crisis in America. Like people don't save enough money, and the current tools available for saving enough money are not helping people. And so we want to change that.
Here's a thing, and I've been thinking about this because I have nieces and nephews, and they play games, right? So they're well versed in Fortnite, or it could be Roblox, and they're used to digital bucks, right? So they don't worry about, will I have a bank account? Because they're already used to digital currencies. Over time, do you think younger generations will be interested in products where once they they finish college, or they finish some type of education for them that works, and they get their first jobs, they'll be interested in, okay, I want to start a retirement account? Because I do think even the our millennial generation, we all grew up and then finally got jobs and became parents, and then we thought about retirement accounts, and that's why I get excited about choice. Do you think they'll also have that same excitement, or is there like variations where you see this going?
100%. Yeah. What I'm trying to get logged into is, here we go. So Dude, we talk about this all the time. Like, this is our little game inside the app. It's called Blinko. You can play it every day and you can win Bitcoin. And it's just fun. And like,
Nice.
users tell us all the time that their kids come up and ask them to like drop the little chip every day. And so that, like, yes, to your point of kids having like looking at savings differently because of Bitcoin and also because of tools that are available in the world, I fully believe that. Like, I don't buy the like nag on millennials thing or the nag on Gen Z thing at all. Like, I actually think there's a ton of intentionality across the board about like taking their career more seriously, figuring out their finances more seriously, figuring out how do you help themselves and help the world. I think that's all there. And I think it's in Bitcoin. And I also think it's in just the apps that everyone's making.
Yeah, but by the way, shout out to Hero Gamer. He mentioned that you had the Christmas stash going already.
Yep.
We love Hero.
No, appreciate. Yep. Hero's just been a good help on a lot of things as well. I've messaged him. And he's been helping my thinking.
Yeah, I was. We were going to say, man, Hero Gamer has been a really positive force in Stacks ecosystem. He's been pushing governance and decentralization through governance, different groups, and he's got myself and James involved. So really cool to hear that from you, Brian, because we absolutely love the guy.
Yep.
Yeah. I was gonna dive in too. Bitcoiners. I feel like at the beginning, a lot of Bitcoiners, there was that kind of inherent distrust of banks and all of that. And I even described a zero a long time ago where it was like, I thought it was an interesting solution, but I was still learning about the world. And I didn't realize how much just plaque there was in the world, how much, decay there was. And so as soon as I started realizing the problems we had, I realized, oh, wow, yeah, we do need this solution. It's not just cool and beautiful design or whatever. It's like, oh, this is necessary. And you were talking about the young folks and all of that, and it's like I think they do intentionally have to worry and care a lot more about this because they're the ones that are going to be impacted by this the most. And so it's like they're in search of a solution. They see the problems. So
yeah.
But oh yeah, and I was gonna say too that kind of the distrust and banks and all of that. I think it's interesting. Like you said, we had to have some flawed token designs, especially like in the DeFi world. But I think the roots of DeFi are kind of in a way, the replacement of Wall Street, the replacement of how some of these things operate. And for like the opportunity, if you do build something sustainable, is that you have a place where Bitcoiners can feel they can earn in these platforms, but it's not some sort of crazy thing that the floor is going to fall out from underneath of them.
Yeah. No, agreed. And I like what you said about I honestly didn't realize how much decay like there was either. Like the rabbit hole is so deep, and it's a bummer. Like, it's a bummer that it's like so much of society is pretty like, dude, life is hard. Like, life is very hard, like, for a lot of people. And that's why even me today, just being like, dude, life is good. Like, I almost feel bad, like, saying that sometimes, just because I have just a clear head of like, I appreciate what I'm able to work on every day. I appreciate what my family's doing. I appreciate that I'm able to like see the financial like chaos that's happening. But know that I'm like actively doing something about it at a individual level and at a society level. And so, yeah, I hope that other people can, I hope that the like sound tools can like shine through and help a lot of people.
Looking back over this past year with the whole debacle from Three Arrows Capital and Celsius, it really solidified in my mind that DeFi is the solution, because while all of I will admit I was early with BlockFi. I moved all of my assets, but then I used Celsius, but I moved all of those assets. But then I did want to get some yield from Voyager. So I had a little bit there, right? But because I know about crypto, I know about custodying my own assets, I felt more comfortable. But there's a lot of people who are not feeling comfortable to custody because they hear about hacks, they hear you lose the seed phrase, all of your money's gone. So there is this whole cohort of people that are not comfortable, and Web3 is not comfortable for them. But I do believe that will come, and easier solutions will come along. I mean, look at, Choice App. You can have both solutions, right? You can have custody or non-custodial as well. I think that's awesome. But just the whole debacle with 3 Arrows and Celsius, why I became even more bullish on Alex Go or Arcadico building on stacks, and even DeFi protocols on Ethereum, is because even though 3 Arrows, Capital, Celsius, they didn't have to pay people. You know who they did have to pay? They had to pay. MakerDAO. They had to pay Compound. They had to pay Aave. They had to, or the contract wouldn't release the funds. And I said, this literally is the proof that this works, even in the harsh conditions. And if you're a company and going to the future, or you're a person, why in the world would you send some person your assets when DeFi works? And DeFi proves that if you don't put up the collateral and pay it back, well, then you don't get your funds. And not only that, but then you as the end user, you get those funds because the obligations weren't met. To me, it just solidified that's the future.
Dude, that's great framing. I hadn't heard it framed like that, actually. And that's great framing. And so taking that a step further, one thing that bothers me about current language around DeFi is when a reentrancy happens, or when a flash loan hack happens. On the opposite side of that, how you're saying that the contract was the contract and the software was the software, and those protocols recovered the funds from like 3 Arrows. On the flip side, dude, when a flash loan happens, or when a reentrancy happens, which we can talk about why Clarity beats Solidity on that. Dude, if that's how it was set up, then why is that called a hack? Why isn't that just called great trading? And why isn't it celebrated? Because we have to eat our own dog food. We have to eat our own dog food on this. It can't be oh, sweet when it works, but then, oh, that was manipulative and took advantage of the thing or whatever when it doesn't work. No, it can't be like that. And I don't think using the word hack in both instances of someone's actual, private keys having a security issue versus an economic design being poor, those are not both hacks. You as a founder, you as a DeFi founder, you as a protocol founder, this is the big leagues now. There's a bunch of competing stuff, all over the place. And so that's something I think about.
And you also piqued my curiosity, Brian. You said something when we were just discussing topics a week ago, and you said why I think about stacking in terms of sats per STX, like a rental property. And I just a couple of those things in a tweet storm. I thought, man, I know how James thinks about this, but I haven't thought about it framed like that. I heard stacks as a Bitcoin bond before. But that rental property, that a lot of people do want real estate in their portfolio. But then what is another way if you don't quite have the capital to buy property? I feel like this is another way, and Bitcoin is digital real estate almost. And
so I don't super use the digital real estate analogy, and I don't super mean it in oh, this is replacing real estate investing or whatever. That's not what I mean by all of that. I just mean in terms of cash flow. When you and another one would be buying an ASIC miner. If I pay money for an ASIC miner, the profit or the income is denominated in sats. If I buy a rental property, and ideally, some of these property management places will begin to add the pay me in Bitcoin, and my rental income will come to me in Bitcoin. Both those things are not listed in terms of an APY, or a bank account interest rate. It's not listed like that. It's in terms of how much money am I putting in, and then how much because I have to buy this thing, and then this thing is going to pay me Bitcoin on a schedule. So that's the reason why, like, I think about it more like that, because when I see the APY, and this is when I think about DeFi in general. When I think about DeFi in general, I don't like I don't really, the APY just doesn't really do it for me. Like, I rather think about it just like private lending, and I'm like privately lending it to someone, and then how much income per time period am I receiving back? Because so that's the way I think about it. And so
Okay.
I think that's what I'm bringing up by that, because then knowing sats per STX then allows you to compare all the DeFi methods available of like how much Bitcoin income can I earn through trying, each of these things.
Yeah. And I know there's there was a lot of people when Bitcoin, you had institutional adoption happening, and people were going, hey, yeah, we, some of these institutions, they want some yield on their Bitcoin and all of this. And, it is interesting to think about, like, I think the days of people getting 15-20% in a DeFi protocol hopefully are over. I'm hoping that we come back to the real world where, people start earning, actual kind of normal returns, and things are a lot more sustainable. But yeah, like when you think about things like that, it's if it's able to produce sats, and you think, if you're a Bitcoiner, you're thinking, okay, that's another source of Bitcoin for me to hold, when most people, they think, okay, well, the only way for me to get Bitcoin is I got to go earn cash and then trade it, or I have to have ASIC miner. And the more and more things that we have, whether it's like an online gig marketplace where people can earn Bitcoin, or whether people can earn it through like hodl hodl, or like all kinds of, the more stuff we have where people can earn sats, you're going to get that association of the work they did or what they put up, and they're going to start denominating it in sats too. And that, I think there's a lot of value there.
100%. Like, that's why I think one of the most interesting things that happened over the last few years was the pay me in Bitcoin, and the fact that like took off and was a thing. And now you have like multiple places where you can go type in like a checking account, routing account number into your regular W2 ADP job and have Bitcoin show up in your Bitcoin wallet, because then that leads into, because that's really where then the circular economy starts. Because if you're getting paid in Bitcoin, then it immediately goes into, okay, well, how do I pay my bills with Bitcoin? Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't, and you're right. And that's why Stacks is a great, like, if that's the first time you ever got paid in Bitcoin was through stacking STX, then you're going to go look for other ways to get paid in Bitcoin. And that's going to, or it's going to, that's something that makes me excited.
Hey, we had a comment from Hero Gamer. So just really quick, if he was saying, did you know Bitcoin blockchain doesn't know Bitcoin denomination? Bitcoin itself only knows in sats. As far as I know, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, 1 Bitcoin or 0.5 BTC really doesn't exist in Bitcoin blockchain level.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I'm not sure either. I'm not sure. Hero, you're going to have to stop by on the live stream, man, and educate us all here.
I think his point might be that the blockchain's just in the Satoshi standard.
Yeah.
But no,
he said he'll ask some Bitcoiners.
Perfect.
And he'll get back to us. Hey, we're gonna wrap here soon. We're at time. Brian, this was awesome, and really appreciate you stopping by, man. This was everything and more. I told James months ago, like, it'd be awesome to start getting different people with different perspectives from Bitcoin, but they're also building real world tools, because there's a lot of chatter on Twitter, and sometimes people who are completely new and they probably bought some Bitcoin or some Ethereum and they want to learn more about Bitcoin, and the first they see some maxis who are toxic, and so they think, oh, well, then Stacks must be a scam because this guy said it, and so that kind of turns a lot of people off. But I do believe just having more thoughtful and open-minded conversations, and even if Stacks is not for you, just knowing all of the facts and knowing how it works, that's really what we're here to do. So we just appreciate all of the kindness that you shared over Twitter, just like thought-provoking tweets to really make me think differently about a couple of things, just concepts wise. And I just think this conversation has been awesome, man.
Yeah. No, guys, look, same from my end. I love hanging out, love talking.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, anybody out there, you know, whether you want to sell your chair and go buy some Bitcoin, I would, you know, if you're not at that level, you can always, you know, go check out the Choice app and hopefully put some of your retirement in Bitcoin. You should definitely check that out. Go ahead, go give it a go. You know, and in the long run, you know, you determine an allocation that you're comfortable with, show it to your parents, get them on board. You know, the more people we have that at least own some Satoshis, they have the buy-in, they care, they're going to keep up with it. That's what ownership is about. So, yeah, check it out. And super stoked, really excited to have you on, Brian. Hopefully we can stay in contact here in the future and keep up with one another. Yeah, like I say, I try and tell, you know, Bitcoiners that are from all over, you know, if they're listening and they go, oh, we don't like stacks or whatever, it's like, hey, you know, you guys don't have to like stacks. You know, there's people that don't like to use Lightning. We just want to give optionality to people that do want to use it. So that's kind of our ethos. So
no, guys, perfect. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Hey, before we depart, just two other things I wanted to ask you, Brian. You brought up an interesting point too, that you learn more about stacks, and then you just kind of had some open questions, and I found it. And look, stacks, I'm sure there are some people who out there who came to stacks and maybe they didn't get this similar response that some of us have received, or there could be some people that are in that minority camp. So I'm not saying that it's this kind and inviting place all of the time. But what I've found is, and this is where I met Patrick Stanley when I first arrived, and I met Zan and Dan, who created Boom Wallet, and saw what Munib was doing and interacted with him too many times, and Brittany and Kyle and Tio, and everyone has been so kind and welcoming. Tell us more about just that whole experience when you first came to Stacks, wanted to learn more, and just something that has surprised you about the ecosystem in general.
Yeah. So I'm like more of a Twitter guy than a Discord guy. So that's definitely where a lot of my like thoughts come from, and I'm definitely better at keeping up on there. So that was one thing. And it like the thing that like it was multiple things. It was when I started asking questions and like I got the stuff back about discrete log contracts, that was like very impressive. When LN swap is just already there and it was simple and it worked, like, and the fact that like Xverse wallet was like already on iPhone, that was like already there and very interesting. And then when I logged on to and listened to some of the like miner calls when they were talking about just how it actually works and talking about the way that, yeah, like having to bid physical Bitcoin to write the next Stacks block, and the fact that that was lining up with the same rate that I was getting on LN swap, that's like what stuck out to me. And then watching the video, I watched a few videos on like why Clarity is better than Solidity, and that like rounded a lot of it out for me. So all that stuff is kind of the path that I took.
Can we expect at some point in the future to see Choice app building a product on Stacks at some point? Because here's where I think it gets even more interesting, right? So Munib has floated the idea of this solution for the peg in, peg out native BTC coming. Mm-hmm. Then we'll have DLC contracts, discrete log contracts, where you can move Bitcoin into different apps and you don't have to wrap it. Mm-hmm. Then at that point, toxic maximalists cannot say anything because you have native Bitcoin on chain, and there's no other chain that can do that.
Yeah. So to the first question, look, I may or may not have already said that inside like internal meetings, and yeah, like if you feel like tagging the account and saying that, then you can say that. But I don't have the ability to like single-handedly like make product decisions. And then to the second point, look, guys, I would reframe I don't love the whole like maxi, non-maxi, or whatever framing of anything. I totally understand where it comes from, and I totally understand why sometimes it's still the simplest shorthand to explain what it means. So this is not like a jab or whatever. I totally understand the shorthand of what it's being said. What I think is more impactful is just talking about the economics of like Bitcoin as base currency of Web3 and like why a for-profit protocol is better than a company. That's what I think is better, because I think just I understand talking about the culture and talking about Bitcoin subcultures and I've never even liked the word tribalism. I don't like the like Bitcoin Ethereum competing with each other. I understand where all that comes from, and it's not going anywhere. I'm not naive enough to be like it's not going anywhere. What I'm just want to be an advocate for is talking about why for-profit protocols are better than companies, and why like tokens could be and hopefully are better than the stock market, and why like digital items priced in Bitcoin creates a bid for Bitcoin. That's the stuff I want to talk about now. Like I want to cut directly to that and talk about how does it actually happen, that because that's where that's what helps my brain more.
No, that makes complete sense.
Yeah, I get that totally. Focus on the solutions and the mission, and whether people sentiment changes or not, you're gonna make some great stuff in the process. That's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And by the way, so we're gonna get the hashtag trending. Stackers out there, Hero Gamer, let's get the trend going. Build choice on stacks, and let's at them. Hey Brian, this was so awesome, man. We're gonna have to have you back here and talk about some more Bitcoin topics, man. This was so awesome. Finally glad to have you on the live stream, and really appreciate your time today on this Friday.
Yep. Cool, guys. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you later.
Hey, take care.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Zero Authority is a community of people who believe in open source and permissionless systems. Thanks for supporting the community. Remember why you started.